Thanks, David. I give a speech about once every 10 years, and I told David that I'd been a speechwriter he knows for almost 25 years, and I just learned this 6 weeks ago, so I'm going to give you a shortcut here. 6 years ago, I met with two colleagues for a few days here in Washington to go over 25 speeches written over 25 centuries to try to answer the question, what makes a speech great? And the answer we came up with was, we don't have any idea. But we did figure out a few things. A speech is an act of persuasion with three elements: trust, argument, request. Trust is a measure of how receptive the audience is to you. If you imagine George W. Bush, joint session of Congress, September 20, 2001, that's high trust. Argument is where you make your case that a person should feel, think, or do something. If you imagine Thurgood Marshall, U.S. Supreme Court, fall of 1953, that's a strong argument. Request is where you actually, the thing you ask someone to do or think or feel. And if you imagine Ronald Reagan at the Berlin Wall in 1987, that was a bold request. These three are interrelated. If the trust is low, you better have a good argument. If you have a good argument, you can make a bigger request. If you want to make an even bigger request, it helps to have a lot of trust. This is more or less what we figured out 6 years ago, and that's where my analysis has languished since. Until 6 weeks ago, when an insightful friend with great timing sent me two speeches that changed what I wanted to say today. I'll tell you about those speeches in a minute, but first, which is more important, trust, argument, or request? The request, of course, is central. But you can't make a big request without high trust or a strong argument, so it's dependent on the other two. The argument is important, especially when trust is low or request is high. But if trust is really low, forget about the argument because no one's listening. Trust is the most important of the three by far. It's not even close. If trust is high, you can skip the argument and go straight to the request. Ponder that. Trust can get you what you want without any argument. And if the trust is really high, you can make a huge request. Trust is also more versatile than the other two. A request or argument applies to one issue, but you can use trust to ask for anything you want. So how do you build trust? This is where those speeches come in. Can I see hands of anyone who knows the work of Brené Brown or has heard her TED Talks? A few. My experience is that those were startling and taught me a lot about things that she didn't even imagine she was teaching. She's a social science researcher who studies vulnerability and shame. She has the ability to distill years of research into a few sentences, so I will give you three. Here's the first one. Courage, the original definition of courage, is to tell the story of who you are with all your heart. The second, vulnerability is our most accurate measurement of courage. Vulnerability, she says, is to let ourselves be seen. Number three, vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. As I pondered these, the idea jumped at me that vulnerability is also the birthplace of trust. And then I understood conceptually, in a way I could finally communicate, why Sarah Gray's speech with Neil Kolomak that won the Cicero Award last year was so unforgettable. It was a deeply vulnerable speech. The speaker let himself be seen. It showed enormous courage and won immense trust. So in 2006, Neil Kolomak was with the 864th Engineer Battalion of the U.S. Army in Afghanistan when he suffered 2 IED explosions in the course of 3 weeks that left him with a traumatic brain injury. He said that after about 7 or 8 months of doctor's appointments, quote, I heard the 4 words that broke my heart and changed my life: not fit for duty. He tried to find work, but because of his seizures, he couldn't use a chainsaw or a power tool. He couldn't stand on a roof or scaffolding. He wasn't allowed to drive a car. After months and months of no income, rising debt, ongoing seizures, and a new baby boy for him and his wife, finally, tears of joy for a job at Sears at minimum wage. Then he got a breakthrough. A job in parts for military vehicles at Skookum, which works to get jobs for people with disabilities. Then a promotion. He became the safety, quality, and environmental engineer. Neil still has seizures, but he has a home near the base so he can walk to work. He and his wife had a new baby, another boy. They paid off all their credit card debt and now can pay all their bills. Finally, Neil says, I can relax and enjoy my family. Neil gave this prize-winning speech here in Washington to a group of friends just like him. They were getting fired up to go see members of Congress and ask support for the program that gave them the work that rebuilt their lives. He told his friends, this week isn't about us. We already have our jobs. Neil was here to fight for the next guy coming home hurt and needing help. So, do you trust this guy? If he came into your office and made a request, wouldn't you give him whatever you could? Why? He let us see his life. How many of the speeches that you and I write hide a disappointment or a defeat of the speaker or the company or the industry? How many hide the real challenges? And how many of our best passages that we write and the boldest moves we could make do we edit out to reduce risk and miss the chance to increase trust? Neil decided to lay it all down, and it wasn't just for a speech. That's the way he's decided to live his life. And by the way, he needs to update his remarks because I talked to Sarah yesterday, and he's got another promotion. Vulnerability is risky, but if we don't show vulnerability, then we can't show courage, resilience, creativity, determination, and all the other qualities that can really inspire people. So that's my point. The most important element in a speech is trust. And if we want people to be more trusting, we can do less hiding. Thanks.